and welcome to Crafting with You. Today's project is an extension of my last video where I showed you how to make a keyhole scarf using loop yarn. If you don't know how to finger knit using loop yarn, I highly suggest you check out that video to learn the basics, as I'll be skipping over some of those basic steps to make this video shorter. Loop yarn has been available for a few years, but I recently came across this type of yarn. It's called the Easy Bernat Alize blanket easy graphic yarn, and this intrigued me because it's a dual colored yarn that can be knitted to form colored patterns. It comes in a variety of colors, so you can choose a color combination that works for you. The loops are about half the size of a regular loop yarn, and the hand feel to me is not as plush as this one, but it's still very soft. I've always wanted a houndstooth pattern scarf, so I went with the charcoal ecru color combo. So let's get started. You'll be using this pattern to make your scarf. I got it from the website that produces this yarn, but it was sized for a blanket, so I had to reduce it down. I made it only 12 loops across, which works out to 5.5 inches for the scarf width. I think that's probably a good width for most people. If you want to make it wider, you'll have to increase the number of loops by multiples of 4. And when you're ready to start your project, you can either pause on this pattern or you can do a screenshot and print it out, but you'll be referring to it very often. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure all of the same colors are on the top and the bottom. So you see how it's all twisted here? You're going to want to make the ecru color or the charcoal color, either one, on across all the tops and across all the bottoms like this. And trust me, this will make your life easier. Another tip I have for you is I did so many trials of this scarf and I kept missing loops or using the wrong loop. And when I say using the wrong loop, it's because each one is kind of a pair. So every time you knit one of these loops, you're either doing this color or this color. So on your next row, if you're not careful, you could be knitting the wrong one. So after multiple attempts, what I came up with that saved me is, I know not everybody has these, but these are called stitch markers. And this is, sometimes I use these when I crochet and I knit. And it's if you need to mark a certain stitch, like where to start and stop. This saved me. These are pretty inexpensive. If you go to your local craft store, Amazon, any type of those places, they'll have these. This will make your life easier. If you don't want to use them, that's totally your option. But I'm telling you, you're gonna need these. So we're going to first count out 1, 2, and we're not going to use these at all because these are going to be our weave in yarns. So what I like to do is I'm going to take the stitch marker, and if this is stitch number 1, we're going to mark this as our beginning stitches. So you'll always know where you started. Okay, so I said ours is 12 across, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This will be your first row. If you look at the pattern, the first row that you're going to knit, you're knitting this way. So let's count out. Again, make sure all the yarns are facing the same colors. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Here you go. So this is where you use your stitch markers. So the first color is going to be this one. Next one is here. So you just go ahead and use your stitch markers and mark which color you're supposed to knit. Okay, once that's done, take your stitch marker out. This is the first one, and you're gonna loop it against here. Okay, and securely. Next one, this one. Take your marker out, and the second loop is this one. Next one is this, and just keep following where you did your stitch marks, and you should be fine. So I'll see you back at the end of the first row. Okay, this is your last stitch, and your first row is done. So again, it looks a little messy. You're going to want to pull up on, okay, see how that could have been a mistake. I thought that was something I knitted. That was the corresponding loop to that one. And that's how this gets dangerous. It's this one that's correct. Okay, so pull up on all of the ones you threaded through. Like this, and you have your first row done. My suggestion is after you did the first row, all the loops that you're gonna knit next, like these ones, put to the top, and all the corresponding loops of the opposite color, tuck under so that you don't get confused. So like tuck it under all like this. And this one, oops, I forgot. Okay, so you have the next loops you're gonna use right up there. Now you're going to count out another 12 here. Make sure all your loops are the same color. And get your stitch markers, these again. And row number 2, we needed it this way for the first row. Now you're gonna be going this way. So for the pattern, make sure that when you mark these, you're not marking from right to left. You're going to be marking the colors. I know this is kind of counterintuitive, but this one, it's going to be the first color on your left, and then you're going to go opposite of what it looks like on the pattern. That's the only way to get it correct. So for instance, this second row, I'm going to be doing this color, the dark, 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 and then light. So you get it? We're gonna knitting this way, so it's gonna be dark, 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 light. I have all my loops marked for the second row, so I'll see you back after I'm done knitting. I am done knitting the second row, and I pulled up on all the loops after I was done to make sure that they're secure. I tucked in the corresponding colored loops on the bottom so that I'm all ready for my next row. So go ahead and do rows 3 and 4. Remember, row 3, you'll be knitting this way. Row 4, you'll be knitting this way. I'll see you back after row 4. I went ahead and completed all 4 rows. I actually added the 5th row so you could see what the pattern looks like. You're going to keep repeating these 4 rows repetitively until you get to the measurement of the scarf length you want. When you're done with that, I will show you how to finish the back side, because if you turn this over, there's all these just loops hanging. If you want, you can leave it this way. I guess it's a look. I like a real clean finished look, so I'll show you how to finish this side also. If you reach the scarf measurement that you want and you have it long enough, you got to finish the other side. So what you're going to do is when you turn it over, of course, there's all these loose loops. You're going to have to loop and knit these up as you go. So start at this end, and you'll see the row here that you just finished right here. This will be your starting. And you're just going to kind of loop up as you go. So this is your first loop. Take the upper loop, thread it through this lower one. This. And pull up. You're going to go same thing. Thread the upper one through the lower. This. And you just keep going. Again, there's a lot of loops here and it could be a little confusing. Make sure that you're using the loop that is right above it and not one on these other rows. So loop up, keep going till you get to the end of the row. Okay, the row is all done. Now, this row is done. You're going to loop all these loops into this next row. And what I do to make it easier is I kind of just separate all the loops in the row I need to knit like this, and I push these up. So you know not to try to catch these. So this is the loop here. This is the first loop in this row. Thread through, pull up. Thread through, pull up. Thread through, pull up. And you just keep going every row till you get to the top. When you finish looping all of them to the top, you'll have this one row left. You're going to have to bind off. So let's turn this over. Take your first loop and your second loop, and you're going to thread this one through here. This, take your second one, thread it through this one. Take the second one and thread it through the first. Keep going until you finish the end of the row. Once you get to here, this is stitch number 1. Thread this through. And there you go. The row is finished. For these 2 loops that we skipped in the beginning, mine already kind of came apart, so that was easy for me. But you're going to have to undo these loops and then weave these ends in between these yarns. But one trick I want to tell you about is one of these ends, you're going to want to loop it through this last one here so it securely holds this in. So number 1, to undo this loop, there are little threads in between here, and you're just gonna have to snip these. Like there's one, go ahead and snip that. Oh, I just pulled it apart. Once you get one done, they all come apart pretty easily. So you'll just weave in these ends, but as I said previously, you wanna take one of these, thread it through here to secure that last loop, and then you can begin weaving it through so that you cannot see it. And then you're done. This is my finished scarf. I'm so happy with it. I did make a keyhole on mine. So if you want to know how to do that, refer to my other video. This keyhole is 4 loops wide for this width. Because this is a dual colored scarf, whatever pattern you make on one side, it'll be the exact opposite on the other. So you get kind of 2 looks in one. This is a houndstooth, so you can't really tell a difference. But I actually like this side better. I don't know. So I hope these instructions were easy for you to understand. It took me a while to figure this one out. So I hope all the pain that I went through is a benefit to you. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time on Crafting with You.